name is David Marsh, and together with Endava, we are chatting with our network of industry experts to explore the trends, strategies, and innovation and opportunities that are shaping the future of payments. Today, I'm joined by Ches Rafferty from Scantech, and we're going to talk about everything digital identity. Hi, Ches, how are you?
Doing well, David. Thanks for having me on the show.
Thanks for coming along. So tell us a little bit about Scantech, what it is they do, and what's happening in the industry.
Yeah, so Scantech provides a remote cloud verification tool. So a way that you can remotely onboard your customers or citizens or students, depending on your use case. That in very simple terms, a text message or an email goes out, a link's available, user walks through document verification, get some facial biometrics, and then some back to source checks to verify that those documents are real, what we call identity proofing. And really, I guess what we specialize in and what we think our secret sauce is, how do you make that really easy for the end customer? They've often never done this before. You've got, from very technically competent people to people who are less technically confident. How do you make that a really easy process so that they get to the end of it, they've done what they need to be onboarded successfully, they're happy that the process, and really importantly, it's securely done. The data never leaves its jurisdiction. And then how do we provide that result back to our business customers so that they can rapidly onboard their customers and really reduce what we see is a lot of manual overhead. Certainly manual overhead has risks around data sovereignty, also has risks around humans making errors. And how do we make that really easy so that they can get onto providing the services that they provide best to their customers?
And recently we've had a lot of cybersecurity issues happening in Australia, not specific to payments, but to other industries. Do you envisage that's going to drive digital identity forward? Do you think this is something we'll see more of in the market?
Yeah, look, it's, as you know, a really fractured market at the moment. We've already seen some jurisdictions in Australia, and we've seen globally as well, move to digital identity. In Australia, New South Wales and South Australia already there. Queensland's very close to launching theirs. Different technologies have been used, different implementations. Certainly, currently, the digital identity is stronger in in-person verification, which doesn't necessarily solve a lot of these remote verification issues that we've seen. I've got no doubt what we've seen today. Well, I've got no doubt what we're already seeing is customer increase in awareness and activity, people coming talking to us now. So it's really, really seemed to have breached that, that kind of, is it important, isn't important? We know it is, but we're not focused on it to really front of mind, both for businesses and governments, but also citizens themselves. I mean, I'm literally having, neighbors come up to me and ask me, is my data safe? I did this. Can I trust my telco? Can I trust my bank? Can I trust, you name the organization where I put my data in across, and the sad reality is in many cases, you sort of know that many businesses haven't taken that leap yet. And I think there's no doubt that there will be many, many boards and many senior executive teams right now having some pretty in-depth and scary conversations when they find out how they're collecting that data, how they're storing that data, and who has access to it. So, yeah, in simple terms, identity, I was speaking to someone recently and they said identity proofing is recession proof. And I tend to agree with them. It's a critical service and it's only going to get more and more relevant as we see the risks that are coming from these cyber criminals.
Yeah, I get the sense that consumer attitudes have changed. In Australia, we had the Australia card a long time ago now, and that never came to pass because there was quite a bit of pushback around that initiative. But I really feel as though people are a bit more open-minded about it, and particularly when you see state governments like New South Wales government and Queensland government start to push towards digital driver's licenses. Do you think that's the trigger to get people more comfortable with the digital identity concept?
Absolutely. Look, I was on a news channel recently, and that one of it was a questions from the audience kind of scenario, and one of them was, I don't feel confident using a digital identity. And my point was, hang on, look at it the other way around. In this situation we had recently with the Optus breach, the New South Wales government was able to reissue their digital driver's licenses within, I think it was less than 24 hours. Now, compare that to the weeks and months that they're talking now for the physical driver's licenses to be replaced in New South Wales and other states. To me, it's the other way around. Like really, digital identity done right, and there's always that's the caveat on any kind of thing with technology, but done right, it's a far more secure process. It allows a lot more information to be shared in certain ways, but in other ways, it allows the information to also be restricted. So you don't necessarily need to collect all the information about an identity of a person, including, things like addresses, if you simply need to perhaps verify them for, purchasing alcohol. Are they over 18? Great. Like, that's some of the real power of digital identity. Some of the concerns I have about digital identity in the short term is you're going to get this situation where we're going to get a fractured market, where we're going to have physical identities, digital identities, different standards for digital identities implemented by different jurisdictions. I feel like it will get there, and I feel like we'll build standards, and there are some ISO standards currently around digital driver's licenses, but they're not necessarily being implemented. It's not like a UN resolution type of thing where we're all going to implement it the same. It's still completely up to jurisdiction. So yes, digital identity is the future. It will take place. I think there's that famous sort of saying about, you always, over predict how fast something will happen. In time, you under predict how big a shift it will be. And I think digital identity is one of those things where it's not going to be here in 2 years, not mainstream, but in 5 years, it might be basically ubiquitous. And think about PayWave on our phone, right? A couple of years ago, few people have it. Now everyone's mums, dads, grandparents, are using PayWave because it's safer, it's secure, it's more convenient, but it takes time for that transition through. That having been said, go to the US now and see if you can get PayWave. Half the places over there are still using, they're impressed they have chip cards. So different jurisdictions, again, are going to have different timeframes.
Okay. And interaction with the consumer data, right? How do you feel identity sits alongside consumer data, right?
Yeah, well, it's really interesting, isn't it? Because in one sense, we're saying that CDR is a proxy for identity, and you can use that for identity. But right now, we don't seem to have necessarily solved the identity getting on the first place. Now, I know there's obviously a big heavy lift by the financial institutes right now to bring that verification of identity on to give you that uplift. How they work together, they're highly complementary. To me, a lot of what CDR offers is value in a certain limited swim lane and a really powerful swim lane. But where I see identity, I see we're in a very early point of identity. I think we're getting close to, in the next few years, we'll start to get a really solid grip on, are you who you say you are, which is the fundamental anchor point of this whole identity piece. You've identity proof, and you've got to know someone who is who they say they are. The next piece, though, is more about what are they as a person, what qualifications do they have, what credentials do they have, what rights do they have. So this is everything I'm talking about from, do you have the money to service a loan? Do you have the income that you say you have? These things can come out of CDR, but there's broader things. If you're in an industry and you work with children, do you have a working with children's permit? Have you got the right tertiary qualifications, and how do we prove you've got them or completed them? Those are the pieces to me that I think are going to be the future of identity, what people want to be able to do. And we've all been there where we've filled in these frustrating levels of forms. I'm currently going through it in my family around some medical issues, and we keep going to different doctors and we fill in the same form over and over again. Literally, what about then? You go through a checklist, they ask you the same 10 questions each time. That's a gross inefficiency just in one sector. And that's not to criticize the medical thing, but why couldn't that element securely whether that's by your My Health kind of process, but bring that forward so that when you go see a doctor with, again, it has to be express consent, but with express consent, a doctor just says, do you mind if I be able to pre-understand your condition? And you click a button and it's all there. Or before you even go for a loan, look, we're not even going to look at approving you, but can we pre-qualify a series of questions, CDR and these other elements put together? Yeah, I'd happily share that. That goes through. Great. We think you are very much likely to fit into our loan profile. Would you like to move forward? So a lot of efficiencies, both for the businesses, sure, and they want to cut costs and do that. But as a consumer, that presents an opportunity to get better value for you. If you're a high value consumer that they'd want to sign up and they can see that, then that can be better rates, cheaper services. So I see a lot of value coming longer term. Part two of identity now. If that scares a lot of people, I look at it the other way, and this data is all out there, and we've seen tragically through the data breaches, Often that does involuntarily out there. But if we could secure it and do it well, wouldn't people want to have the option, and it's not the requirements, the option to be able to provide that? That's, I guess, my broader, where I look for in the future. And again, I said to you earlier, where I look forward in the future that I can turn up to a different country and I can open a bank account because they can fully verify that I'm a trusted individual in Australia and I've had a bank account for many years. And they can know all that and go, well, we know you've just landed in America and you want to open a bank account, but that's no problems at all. Here's your bank account. You're up and running 30 seconds later. That to me is where I'd like to see the future. Again, done with express consent.
Yeah, I think there's definitely some advantages from an administrative perspective and a security perspective there. And then, so I guess back in Australia, then looking at where regulation is at the moment, obviously off the back of the recent cybersecurity incidents we've seen, there's been a lot of discussion around there's room for improved legislation that would enable corporates to be able to use digital identity more holistically. And there's a number of different regulations from the review of the Privacy Act as well. Do you think that that's a handbrake at the moment? Do you think that people or that companies are waiting for that clarity before they can innovate?
Oh, look, I think there's certainly some concerns. I would expect a lot of businesses would be doing reviews now, and there would be a lot of C-level executives and board members that are going to be quite shocked when they get the results of that. Many businesses are still doing things like requesting people to email documents through, like a highly insecure method of transferring information. I think a lot of businesses are going to realize that don't let perfection be the enemy of good, and are going to want to implement a solution. Again, to throw our name out there, for us, it's very much about providing a technology solution that is highly configurable. So not having to lock those businesses in when they go, this is the solution, that's what you're taking. Like, this is how the solution is configured today. As the changes come through, we can change those configurations to keep your requirements up to exactly the specs you need them today. So that's something, I'm not saying us, but look at your providers and look if they've got a monolithic design or they've got a configuration based design. I would personally pick the configuration design to build that future proofing perspective. In terms of legislation, Australia, federated, very, very complex, different state, federal, different legislation that doesn't even line up at a federal level. Interestingly, when the first data breaches came out, the cybersecurity minister, Claire O'Neill, came out very strongly that they were going to make very rapid changes to the Privacy Act. I noticed in recent media interviews that she's given that they've appeared to take a much more process-oriented results, and that they're going to make rapid changes where they can quickly influence and protect citizens, which is absolutely the quick wins, if you want. But rather than rush through a whole bunch of legislation that kicks off a whole bunch of, the law of unintended consequences that causes more problems, they're actually going to sit down and actually have a proper cybersecurity forum, bring the different players, government, citizens, and businesses together to properly work through what this needs to be. And that, I think, is a real game changer, that governments are not wanting to just get the quick wins in terms of the electorate, but actually wanting to look at what this looks like over the next 5-10 years. I'm not saying take 5 or 10 years, but what are the problems going to be in 5 years? Because we need to start designing a solution now that can protect us going into the future. So really quite innovative, I thought.
Great. Well, awesome to chat to you, Ches. Some fantastic insights there. And thanks for joining us on Payment Talks.
Really appreciate it. Always great to chat to you.